Welcome back to Detective Morrison Files, where the shadows of America's past conceal secrets that demand justice. I'm your storyteller, and tonight we journey into the heart of darkness aboard the Midnight Express to Chicago. It's September 15th, 1953. And Detective Frank Morrison is about to encounter a mystery that will challenge everything he believes about the impossible. They say that on certain nights, when the moon is dark and the rails sing with an otherworldly melody, the trains themselves become witnesses to crimes that defy the laws of physics. Tonight, aboard the Northern Pacific's most luxurious express, we'll discover that some disappearances are more than mere magic tricks. They're carefully orchestrated symphonies of deception.
Detective Frank Morrison had earned his reputation solving the unsolvable. After cracking the Riverside heiress case, his name was whispered in police stations from New York to San Francisco. But Chicago was different. Chief O'Malley had called him personally, his voice heavy with desperation. "Morrison," O'Malley had said, "we've got a situation that's making my best detectives look like amateurs. A man vanished from a locked train compartment. Not just missing, vanished into thin air. The press is calling it supernatural. I need you to prove them wrong or right." The Northern Pacific Railroad's Midnight Express was the crown jewel of luxury travel. Mahogany panels, crystal chandeliers, and service that rivaled the finest hotels. But on this particular September night, the train carried more than wealthy passengers. It carried secrets, lies, and a murderer. The victim was Harold Blackwood, a 45-year-old grain merchant from Minneapolis. Tall, distinguished, with silver temples and hands that had never known manual labor. He'd boarded alone, requesting the most private compartment available. The porter remembered him well. He'd tipped generously and asked unusual questions about the train's schedule and security procedures. What the other passengers didn't know was that Harold Blackwood had a secret. In his briefcase, alongside grain contracts and business correspondence, were federal investigation documents that would expose a conspiracy reaching from the wheat fields of Kansas to the boardrooms of Chicago.
The timeline was precise, methodical, and utterly impossible. At 11:30 p.m., Porter William Hayes delivered brandy to Blackwood's compartment. The man was alive, reading documents by lamplight, and specifically requested not to be disturbed until morning. At 11:47 p.m., Conductor James Mitchell performed his regular security check. He confirmed the door was locked from the inside. He could hear Blackwood moving around, papers rustling. Everything was normal. At 12:15 a.m., as the train crossed the Menominee River Bridge, passengers in adjacent compartments heard a scream. Not just any scream, a sound of pure terror that cut through the night like a blade. Mrs. Eleanor Fitzgerald later described it as the cry of a soul being torn from its body. Conductor Mitchell rushed to compartment 7A with his master key. The door was still locked from the inside. When he opened it, he found something that would haunt him for the rest of his life: absolute emptiness. Harold Blackwood had vanished completely. No body, no blood, no signs of struggle. Only his gold pocket watch on the nightstand, its hands frozen at 12:13 a.m., and a hastily scrawled note that read, "The conductor knows the truth about the grain. Trust no one. The ghost train claims another soul." The windows were sealed shut, impossible to open during travel due to safety mechanisms. The walls were solid steel. There were no hidden passages, no trap doors. Harold Blackwood, a man weighing 200 pounds and standing 6 feet tall, had simply ceased to exist.
Detective Morrison boarded the still-moving train at the Milwaukee station, his reputation preceding him like a shadow. The railroad officials were desperate. The story was already spreading, threatening to destroy public confidence in rail travel. Morrison's first task was to interview the passengers in the adjacent compartments. Each had a story, and each story had holes that could hide a murder. Mrs. Eleanor Fitzgerald, 52, widow of a steel magnate, occupied compartment 7B. She claimed to be traveling to Montana to visit her sister, but Morrison noticed inconsistencies immediately. Her luggage was new, expensive, but hastily packed. Her jewelry was museum quality, but her hands trembled when she spoke. "I heard the scream," she told Morrison, dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief. "It was horrible, Detective, like nothing I've ever heard before. But I swear on my late husband's grave, I never left my compartment." Yet Morrison found mud on her evening slippers, fresh mud that matched the soil near the train's external service areas. Thomas Chen, 35, claimed to be a businessman traveling to Seattle, quiet, methodical, with the precision of a watchmaker. But Morrison's trained eye caught details others missed. Chen's fingers were stained with chemicals, his shoes were government issue, and his business briefcase contained equipment that had nothing to do with commerce. Mr. Blackwood seemed nervous, Chen told Morrison, in perfect English, tinged with an accent that was hard to place. But Morrison discovered Chen had been watching Blackwood through a small mirror positioned strategically in his compartment. Sarah Williams, 28, presented herself as a school teacher from Boston, starting a new life teaching in a small Montana town. Sweet, innocent, with the kind of smile that made people want to trust her immediately. But Morrison had learned long ago that the most dangerous predators often wore the most innocent faces. Her story was perfect, too perfect, every detail rehearsed, every emotion calculated. But Morrison noticed her hands, calloused in ways that suggested manual labor, not the soft hands of someone who'd spent years holding chalk and books. Conductor James Mitchell, 45, was a 20-year veteran of the railroad. His record was spotless, his service exemplary. But Morrison sensed fear in the man. Not the fear of being falsely accused, but the fear of something much deeper. "I've seen strange things on these rails, Detective," Mitchell confided during their private interview. "Things that would make a rational man question his sanity. But this is different. Blackwood knew something he shouldn't have known. And now he's gone, just like the others." Morrison's breakthrough came when he discovered Blackwood's briefcase hadn't vanished with its owner.
It was hidden behind a loose panel in the compartment's ventilation system, placed there by someone who knew the train's construction intimately. Inside, Morrison found documents that revealed Harold Blackwood's true identity. Henry Blake, federal investigator for the Department of Agriculture. He'd been tracking a massive grain theft operation that had stolen over $2 million worth of wheat from government stockpiles. The operation was sophisticated. Stolen grain was being transported via railroad, using falsified manifests and corrupt officials. The trail led to Chicago's biggest grain dealers, but also to someone on this very train. Mrs. Fitzgerald's jewelry collection held secrets of its own. Morrison discovered that her family heirlooms were actually recently purchased, but not with money. They were payment for services rendered, and those services involved forged shipping documents. Hidden in her jewelry box, Morrison found railway shipping schedules, coded telegrams, and a list of grain shipment routes that matched exactly with Blake's investigation files. Chen's briefcase contained equipment that made Morrison's blood run cold. A portable telegraph system, government-issued surveillance tools, and most disturbing of all, a syringe filled with a substance that could induce temporary paralysis. But Chen wasn't just a criminal. He was also a federal agent, working the same case as Blake from a different angle. The two men had been hunting the same conspiracy, neither knowing the other existed. Sarah Williams' luggage told a different story than her sweet teacher persona. Hidden in false compartments, Morrison found a complete set of railroad maintenance tools, a conductor's spare uniform, and most incriminating of all, detailed blueprints of the train's construction. But the most chilling discovery was a small notebook filled with names, dates, and locations. It was a hit list, and Harold Blackwood's name was crossed out in red ink. Morrison's eureka moment came when he compared the train's original blueprints with its current configuration. During World War II, Car 7 had been modified for military transport. A secret maintenance access panel had been installed, accessible only from the external service ladder. The modification had been classified, forgotten after the war, and omitted from all civilian documentation. Only someone with access to military railroad records would know about it. The pieces fell into place with terrifying clarity. Sarah Williams wasn't just a killer. She was a professional assassin, hired by the grain theft ring to eliminate anyone who got too close to the truth. Her teacher identity was perfect cover, allowing her to travel freely and appear harmless. Mrs. Fitzgerald was the inside connection, using her social status to launder money and provide information. Thomas Chen was the federal agent getting too close to the truth, next on the hit list. And conductor Mitchell? Mitchell was the man who knew too much, but said too little. The murder was a masterpiece of misdirection. At 12:10 a.m., while the train crossed the Menominee River Bridge, Sarah Williams climbed onto the external service ladder during the cover of darkness and thunder. Using her railroad knowledge, she accessed the hidden maintenance panel. She entered Blackwood's compartment through the panel, finding him reading the very documents that would destroy her employers. Blake fought back, but Williams was trained in combat. She injected him with a paralytic agent, making him helpless but conscious. The scream passengers heard wasn't Blake's death cry. It was his horror at realizing he was being pushed through the same maintenance panel, alive but unable to move, into the rushing waters below. Williams then staged the scene. She planted the pocket watch, wrote the cryptic note to throw suspicion on Mitchell, and locked the compartment from inside before escaping through the panel. The entire operation took less than 3 minutes. When confronted with the evidence, Sarah Williams' mask finally slipped. The sweet school teacher vanished, replaced by a cold-blooded killer who'd eliminated 7 people across 3 states. She confessed not out of remorse, but out of professional pride. "You're good, detective," she said as the handcuffs clicked shut, "but you'll never catch them all. The grain conspiracy goes deeper than you imagine. Blake was just the beginning." Detective Morrison returned to Chicago as the sun rose over Lake Michigan, but his victory felt hollow. Blake's body was never recovered from the dark waters of the Menominee River. Mrs. Fitzgerald disappeared before she could be arrested. Thomas Chan was reassigned to a classified location. The grain conspiracy was exposed, but Morrison knew Williams was right. It was just the tip of the iceberg. In his office, he opened a new file folder and wrote, "The Grain Conspiracy, Ongoing Investigation." Some mysteries are solved with a single case. Others are like unraveling a sweater. Pull one thread, and the whole fabric comes undone. The Midnight Express had given up its secrets, but it had also revealed that some conspiracies run deeper than any single detective can imagine. Join us next time on Detective Morrison Files, when our intrepid investigator descends into the copper mines of Colorado to uncover the case of the vanishing miner, where the earth itself seems to swallow men whole and the darkness hides more than just precious metals.